Hello everyone and welcome back to Vintage Laptop Review. Today we'll be taking an in-depth look at the Winbook XP5, which is a Pentium-based machine from 1995 that I personally believe to be the best DOS gaming laptop ever made, at least on period DOS hardware. We'll be taking a look at its design, specifications, and general usability to show why I believe it to be the best DOS gaming laptop. And then I'll be explaining why, despite its great features, I just can't recommend it for most people as a practical option. Anyways, let's begin. Let's talk about the XP5's design. I like it a lot. Out of all the laptops from its day, only the Compaq LTE 5000 rivals it for my top spot in terms of looks, and I still may prefer this machine to the LTE. The design is as 90s as it gets all around, with the lines and styling all giving it a look that sets it apart from more generic machines like my Alpha Top Green 751. The XP5's design didn't originate with this system. This case was introduced a year earlier with the 46-based Winbook XP, which was technically Winbook's third laptop, but it was really like their second. Aside from the display housing, the XP's case is nearly identical to the XP5. And aside from raw performance, most everything in this review can also be applied to the XP. I'd make this a dual review like I did for the first generation Winbooks if it wasn't for the fact that my XP is completely dead. Anyways, this whole take the 486 machine and throw a Pentium into it thing was pretty common in 1995. Toshiba did it, NEC did it, Dell did it, Compal did it, Nantan did it, and so did many others. The list really goes on. Both the XP and the XP5 were manufactured for Winbook by ASE Technologies in Taiwan. However, unlike all following Winbooks, the XP and XP5 were exclusive designs that weren't sold by other companies. I'd assume that Winbook did a lot of the work on the case design, while ASE likely did the technical side of things, building these laptops to the specs laid out by Winbook. I can't really confirm that, but that's what I'd assume. Let's take a look at the I/O on the XP5. Like most 1995 Pentium laptops, the XP5 didn't have an internal CD-ROM drive. It stuck with a floppy drive, which is located here on the left. Also on the left was your audio line in and line out, and space for the optional modem, which my XP5 has. On the rear, you'll find two port doors. Behind the main door, you'll find your VGA, parallel, serial, and PS2 ports. Nearby is the power jack, which is a standard barrel connector. Very convenient, unlike the original Winbooks, which used a mini DIN. Behind the second door here is the docking connector. It's honestly remarkable that the door is still present on my unit. Being fully removable, the vast majority of these have gone missing over the years. The XP5's dock gave you two 5¼ inch bays, which allowed you to use a CD-ROM drive with the machine, along with two ISA slots from the looks of things. Pretty neat, but of course, quite rare. The right side is bare, aside from the hard drive bay. To remove the hard drive, all you have to do is remove this coin screw here on the bottom, after which the drive can be pulled out of the laptop. On the bottom, you'll find an impressive degree of upgradability. The main battery is here, easily removable, of course, like any other laptop from this time. There were two batteries available for the XP5. The first and most common is the lithium battery, which I believe was standard on most configs. These used Sanyo cells, which nowadays are all dead. I know it's old, but some lithium batteries from this time still work. But these won't. These Sanyo cells always die and they leak, unlike most lithium-ion cells. And they'll let off a smell similar to that of a Sharpie. It's really not pleasant. So you won't find one of these that works. There were also the older nickel metal hydride batteries available. These were the same ones that the Winbook XP used. You can see here they have far less contacts than the lithium pack has. These batteries used cells either from Sanyo or Varta, and these have a better chance of being in better condition and probably are also easier to rebuild, as I don't really see any space in here for a smart BMS like these have. So while I'm not sure if the XP5 lithium BMS locks down when you try to repack the cells, this one is almost certainly able to be rebuilt. The smaller door here allows you to access the sound card bay. The sound card was optional, and putting the door here allowed the end user to install the sound card themselves if they decided to buy one later on. Very convenient. The larger door will give you access to the CPU, cache card, and RAM card. The CPU is a full Socket 5 desktop chip. These ranged from 75 to 133 megahertz. This has the 133, but at some point it was downclocked to 100 megahertz, and I can't figure out the right switch settings to get it back to 133. Oh well, probably runs cooler that way. These do run hot if you were wondering, but not too bad. There is a little fan here. I've not heard it go on mine though. The cache card is 256K. I believe all of them were 256K. And it's nice that the cache is on a card here, because if it fails, like mine did, you can replace it. You don't have to do board repair on the motherboard. Similar story with the RAM. The modules are proprietary, but again, no soldered RAM. So if you have a RAM failure, it's pretty easy to replace. The hard part will be finding another RAM card. The maximum RAM capacity on these is 32 megabytes, and as you might be able to see, this has the 32 megabytes. Pretty rare upgrade that would be. Most of these will have 16 megs, which is honestly enough. One other just nice touch about the laptop is that the AC adapter is actually custom branded. A lot of these laptops from the smaller brands just ship generic AC adapters, but nope, this one's not only branded Winbook, but it's sort of styled like the Winbook too, with its LED like the one on the top, and the little dimples here. I like it. Let's talk more about the XP5 specs. I already mentioned CPU speeds and RAM, so we can skip over that. There were supposedly 4 display options available for the XP5. First, there was a 10.4-inch 640 by 480 passive matrix color display. You'll want to avoid this one if you can, as passive matrix displays look like crap, especially if you're going to be playing games. The next option up from that was a 10.4-inch 640 by 480 active matrix color display. That's the one my XP5 has, and it's the most desirable, as 640 by 480 is the ideal option for DOS gaming. Alright, now there were 2 other display options according to the spec sheet. They were 800 by 600 higher resolution active matrix panels, and there was a 10.4-inch option and an 11.3-inch option. Now, the spec sheet says those existed, but none of their advertising does, not even in their 1997 product catalog, which would have been right at the end of the XP5's life. So, did they exist? Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. I don't know, but they're definitely rare if they do exist. If you have one or have information on them, please reach out to me via email at macdatnet@gmail.com. I'd like to know if these actually existed or not, because I'm curious, especially the 11.3-inch, because they would have had to design a whole new plastic part for that. But hey, they could have existed, they could have not. I don't know. In any case, though, you want 640 by 480 because 800 by 600 displays are worse in DOS because the video cards of laptops in this time just won't scale the image properly, leading to distortion due to them breaking the aspect ratio. And that's if it scales at all. Not all laptops did, and I'm not sure if the XP5 is one of them or not. If it doesn't, you'll be stuck with black borders around the image. So 640 by 480 is the way to go, and luckily, if you end up with an active matrix XP5, it seems pretty likely that that's what you'll have. Oh, and if you're wondering what the contrast control does on an active matrix screen, nothing. The XP5 sound card, if equipped with one, is the ESS Audio Drive 1688. This chip was super common and performs great in DOS. Yes, it's not a real OPL3, it's not a Yamaha chip, but ESS's ESFM emulation is really good, and I can't tell a difference between it and a Yamaha. Maybe you can, I can't. The XP5 also has a pretty decent set of stereo speakers. The video chip in the XP5 was one of two controllers from Chips and Technologies, either the 65545 or the 65548. I believe Winbook called models with the 65548 the XP5 Plus, although I don't think they're labeled this way. I think that was just an internal designation. I have noticed two variations in the bottom model number, though, which on my unit says ANL5. This was the model number ASE gave this thing. I've seen one on eBay that was labeled ANL5P instead. This unit also had a different FCC ID. So I can't confirm this, but I highly suspect that the ANL5P labeled models are the ones with the newer graphics, that XP5 Plus. These specs definitely put the XP5 up as a great DOS gaming machine, but what about it makes me say that it's the best? Well, the XP5 isn't groundbreakingly better than an LTE 5000 or a Toshiba Satellite Pro 400 CDT, but I do think it is just a bit better than those for two reasons: the keyboard and the pointing devices. The XP5's keyboard is a ThinkPad keyboard. It was manufactured by Lexmark and uses the exact same excellent buckling sleeve switches that ThinkPads like the 750C used, or alternatively, absolutely junk ThinkPads like the ThinkPad 350. Thing is, those ThinkPads, none of them with this keyboard, as far as I know, had DOS-compatible sound, meaning that a Winbook XP or XP5 are the only two laptops that combine this keyboard technology with the right specs to make an excellent DOS gaming laptop. There were a few other laptops that use these switches, but they all have some problem in their specs that makes them worse for DOS, whether it's no sound card, no 640 by 480 screen, or something like that. In any case, this keyboard, in my opinion at least, is the best of any laptop from this time that you can get. Plenty of other laptops had great keyboards, don't get me wrong, but the Lexmark boards are just incredible, and this video's whole point is that this thing is a little better, and hey, it's something that puts it above the rest. Anyway, now, pointing devices. There were three main options used by laptops at this time: the track point, the track ball, and the track pad. I personally like all three, but I'm sure that many of you have one or more of those three that you just can't stand, which might make a laptop like the Satellite Pro 400 CDT. If you hate the track point, can't stand it, it might put that laptop out of the running for you. Well, good news. The Winbook XP5 supports all three. If there's one that's your favorite, you can get it with this laptop. All XP5s were sold with the track point in the keyboard. Winbook did actually license the track point directly from IBM, meaning they could use the actual track point name in marketing instead of calling it a pointing stick or AccuPoint or track stick or whatever stupid names everyone was using. But that being said, the track point itself isn't IBM hardware. The two sticks clearly look different, and the Winbook's tracks very differently too. It has like a maximum set speed that you can't exceed, and it also has some play in the actual stick that gives it a bit of tactile feedback. Honestly, I don't dislike how it tracks or the tactile feedback, or call it a loose track point or whatever you want to say. But it may take a bit of getting used to if you're used to IBM's, because it does track a bit differently than how most other laptop track points do. Where it gets interesting, though, is below the keyboard, where there was an option bay of sorts that gave you pointing device customization. The XP5 shipped standard with a set of buttons for the track point, and that was all that was there. I actually have that module, and I'll show you in a bit how easy it is to replace your pointing module in an XP5. That being said, my XP5 was configured with the trackball, which was made by Logitech and uses a larger ball than most PC laptops did, which makes it a bit better to use than some others from this time. The buttons are also nice clicky micro switches, as are the buttons on the trackpoint module. And another thing I like about it is that the buttons are high enough up on the laptop that it isn't too terribly awkward to continue using the track point with the trackball installed. I'll switch between the two for making like more precise movements. I'll use the track point, whereas otherwise I'll use the track ball. The trackpad module was made by Alps, and it's definitely less common than the other two, and I don't have one yet, but it was available, and you might be able to find one. Switching the module was designed to be a job the end user could perform. That way, if you decided later on in your ownership that you wanted a trackpad or something, you could go out and buy one and install it yourself. To do it, first unlatch the keyboard retention bar by sliding it to the right, lift up the keyboard, then lift up the existing module, unplug it, then install the new module, reassemble, and just like that, you're done. It's these two features that put the XP5 a step above the other laptops in this category, in my opinion. It may seem like not that big of a deal, and I mean, I guess it isn't, but the keyboard really is amazing. And the pointer device customization truly makes this a laptop that anyone can customize to how they'd like their laptop to be, which is awesome. It goes a long way to make the XP5's user experience great. And it really is great. Playing DOS games on this machine is wonderful. My one complaint is that unlike, say, my AlphaTop Green 751, there's no way to adjust the scaling on the screen. While not nearly as bad as 800 by 600, 640 by 480 does require scaling to fill the whole screen. DOS games natively ran at 320 by 200. Doubling that gets you 640 by 400, and every laptop I know of at least will double it to fill the screen horizontally. In order to fill the whole screen, though, a vertical stretch must also be done. Some laptops don't stretch, some stretch, and the best ones will allow you to pick between the two, like the AlphaTop does. The XP5 stretches the image, but doesn't let you pick the unstretched mode. I personally prefer it stretched, so it doesn't matter to me, but if you prefer it unstretched, you're out of luck here. So, that's my case for the XP5 being the best DOS gaming laptop. But here's the thing. You probably don't want to buy one. Why? Well, these are unfortunately not reliable machines. The main issue with these is their use of a Varta clock battery. It's soldered right next to the CPU and above the hard drive connector. 99% of these have started leaking to some degree at this point. It's nearly impossible to find one that hasn't. Your best odds are to get one that's just started to leak but hasn't leaked bad yet. Those are still attainable nowadays. They won't be in a few years, though. This is only going to get worse. So on an eBay listing or wherever, what you want to check are these two screws. If there's corrosion or rust on either of them, you've had a severe leak and are going to be in for major repairs. In any case, though, these screws not showing corrosion doesn't mean you won't have bad traces or bad vias. It just means it probably won't be as bad. Step one when you get an XP5 should be to remove the battery, whether the laptop works or not, remove the battery, and clean any corrosion off. Typically, these will look worse than they actually are. This XP5 had several corroded vias and a couple corroded traces, but after cleaning, only one via and one trace were actually bad. These will also not boot reliably at all without a working CMOS battery installed. Without a battery, it's very likely that it'll just throw a 113 beep code indicating a CMOS RAM read-write failure. So make sure you install a new battery when fixing one of these machines. Also, if you have an XP5 that posts but won't recognize any hard drive, the battery is again likely at fault, as a leak will often damage traces in the IDE circuit. My first XP5, which was absolutely beat to hell, has this problem, and yeah, it would take a lot of work to get this board running again. Even with no bad traces and a working CMOS battery, my working XP5 is still cranky. It's like an old car. It needs a few tries before it'll actually post, and when it does eventually post, it'll need a few minutes after that to warm up, until which it will just reboot itself on the Windows splash screen. I can get into DOS, but it just needs a few minutes before it'll boot Windows. I don't know why that is. After that, it's completely fine. I don't know why it's cranky, but it is. I'm just glad it works. The main issue, of course, is that every year that goes by will mean more XP5s dead from corrosion. In another decade, pretty much any XP5 that hasn't been serviced will be a corrosion heap. This, of course, also applies to many, many other laptops from this time. It's not a unique XP5 issue, but still, it sucks. Let's assume you have a working XP5 with no corrosion, though. Let's assume the best case scenario. It's still not a practical option as a laptop. Like any laptop from this time, the plastics are brittle as can be, and the XP5 combines that universal issue with poor, terrible, crappy hinge mounting design. If you use the hinges, the plastic will break, and your XP5 will quickly end up looking like my poor parts unit does. My nice one even has this big old crack right at the base here, and this will get worse if I use the hinge. I leave it open at all times to prevent that from happening because I really like this laptop and I like using it. I probably wouldn't give the same care to a machine that wasn't as nice as this one is. Oh, and by the way, this floppy drive is a Citizen W1D. Don't expect it to work. You'll need to replace the belt in these that always goes bad. So, the conclusion here is that despite its amazing feature set, the XP5 only makes sense if you find a working one and don't care about using it as a laptop. For me, that's fine. I have other machines that work better as laptops when I need to take one of these on the go. But for most people, it's just not a very practical option, and you'll probably want to look towards a system like the LTE 5000 or the Toshiba Satellite, which while they have their own issues, once you have a working one, you can take them places and they won't fall apart nearly as easily. I mean, yeah, those machines aren't quite as good as an XP5, but the other stuff is going to outweigh that for most people. So that's about it for this review. The arbitrary laptop review score is gone, by the way. I did try to make an objective scale, but I didn't like how it turned out, so I'll just let you come up with your own thoughts and opinions on this machine. I certainly love it. It's my go-to for DOS gaming. But it's also a sad example of how time is killing vintage laptops. A real shame given how nice of a machine this is, but hey, that's time for you. But that's it. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd much appreciate a like. It takes a lot of effort to make these reviews. I enjoy doing it, and I'd appreciate any support. But with that, I will see you all next time. Goodbye.